There are days when getting out of bed feels like pulling up roots. You're grounded, rooted in your past and what's already happened, and what you once believed to be true. And suddenly, those roots feel heavy, like anchors dragging you down. On days when courage feels small, Miriam would sit by her kitchen window, a mug of lukewarm tea in her hands. The garden outside, drenched in early morning light, was quiet. The only sounds were the hum of a passing car and the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by a faint wind. She often watched those leaves, imagining that they too carried the weight of yesterday's troubles and yet still found a way to sway gently with the day. This morning, she noticed the sparrow that always perched on the same branch near the rose bush. It pecked at some invisible crumb, tilting its head as though it were solving a puzzle only it could understand. Miriam felt a quiet smile curl at her lips. Joy, she realized, did not need proof. It was in the act of noticing, of being present, not in some grand certificate or public display. Later, she walked to the corner bakery, the familiar path lined with chestnut trees that had started shedding their brown leaves in thin, brittle layers. She greeted the baker, a man with creases at the corners of his eyes that made him look perpetually amused. He nodded at her silently, and she returned the gesture. No words were needed. The simple recognition of presence was enough to anchor her day. As she walked back home, bread in hand, Miriam felt the sunlight warm her face. It was not a dramatic warmth, nor did it sweep her into euphoria, but it was steady, subtle, a quiet reminder that the day existed beyond her doubts. She realized that in these moments, she was learning to let go of the shame she had carried for years, the shame of not being ambitious enough, not being adventurous enough, not having her life mapped out like others she knew. She set the bread on the counter and began preparing her small lunch. The knife's blade met the vegetables with soft, rhythmic sounds. The scent of fresh herbs filled the kitchen. Miriam thought about the letters she had received the day before. A friend's update about a child learning to ride a bicycle, a cousin's news about a new job. Each note seemed trivial on its own, but together they formed a patchwork of ordinary triumphs, small joys that did not require validation. By afternoon, the quiet hum of her routine wrapped around her like a blanket. She tended to her little balcony garden, adjusting pots and watering flowers. The basil had grown thicker since yesterday, its leaves almost brushing her fingertips. She inhaled its aroma, feeling an unspoken connection to life's persistence. Even the tiniest gestures, watering a plant, straightening a book on a shelf, carried significance when observed with care. Miriam paused and sat on the balcony chair, letting her gaze drift over the city rooftops. Children's laughter echoed faintly from a distant playground. A neighbor called greetings to another across the street. Somewhere, a dog barked, its voice sharp against the muted city sounds. She didn't need to do anything extraordinary to feel a part of it all. Her presence, her quiet attention, was enough. The day continued without fanfare. She read a short story, drank another cup of tea, and watched the sky shift colors as evening approached. The setting sun cast long shadows across her little balcony garden, painting the leaves in hues of burnt orange and deep red. The air, still warm from the day, carried the scent of wood smoke from a distant chimney, mingling with the sweet aroma of her gardenia plant. As darkness began to settle, the city lights twinkled on one by one, transforming the night into a scattered constellation. Miriam felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, a stillness that wasn't just about the absence of sound or movement, but a quiet understanding of her place in the grand tapestry of existence. She thought about the young sapling she had planted in her garden a few months ago. Every day she had watered it, shielded it from harsh winds, and sung to it on days when the sun was cold. Today, as she watched it sway gently in the evening breeze, she realized it had grown stronger, more resilient. It had learned to dance with the wind instead of trying to stand rigidly against it. In that moment, she understood that her journey, too, was much like that of the young tree. Life hadn't dealt her a perfect, unwavering calm, but through small, consistent acts of nurturing and acceptance, she had cultivated a strength within herself. She was learning to lean into the inevitable storms, knowing that with each gust of wind, she would grow deeper roots and a sturdier frame. The following day dawned crisp and clear, the sky a canvas of the purest blue, dotted with clouds that drifted lazily like cotton ships on a silent sea. Miriam woke up with the sun, a lightness in her chest that had nothing to do with the weather. Yesterday's storm had passed, leaving behind a tranquility that resonated deep within her. Today was a new page, a blank verse waiting for its melody. As she moved through her morning ritual, each action flowed into the next with a newfound grace. The water from the tap sang a cheerful tune as she watered her plants, the steam rising from her mug of tea forming ephemeral waltzes in the air. The pages of the book she was reading whispered secrets to her, and the rustling leaves outside her window seemed to applaud the symphony of life unfolding around her. A gentle knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. Standing on her doorstep was a young girl with hair the color of ripened wheat and eyes as blue as the summer sky. "Good morning," chirped the girl, extending a hand holding a bunch of sunflowers so bright they seemed to hum with their own inner light. "I picked these for you, ma'am. They reminded me of your gardenias." Miriam's heart swelled with a warmth that spread through her limbs, chasing away any lingering chill. She took the flowers, their rough petals brushing against her fingers like shy whispers. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice catching in her throat. The girl's spontaneous act of kindness, like a playful note in a melody, added a layer of sweetness to Miriam's day. As the hours slipped by, Miriam found solace in the ordinary magic of everyday life. The feel of freshly laundered linen, the taste of bread still warm from the oven, the sound of children's laughter echoing from the park across the street. Each moment was a verse in the poem of her existence, contributing to a harmony that was uniquely hers. And then it happened. A single raindrop, fat and determined, plummeted from the sky, splattering on Miriam's balcony like a tiny drumbeat. Soon, more drops joined the rhythm, intensifying into a melody of pitter-patter. At first, Miriam watched with detached curiosity, but as the downpour grew heavier, a flicker of unease crossed her face. Memories of yesterday's storm threatened to resurface, stirring anxiety in their wake. In that moment of vulnerability, Miriam felt a sudden urge to retreat into the fortress of her habits and routines. For a fleeting instant, she considered closing the windows, drawing the curtains, and surrendering to the comforting sameness of her well-worn rituals. But then she paused, her gaze falling on the young sunflower plant she had received that morning. Its leaves, once perky and vibrant, were now drooping, mirroring her own wilting spirit. With a resolute sigh, Miriam straightened. She knew that shielding herself from the rain wouldn't just leave her sunflower drenched and dejected, but would also envelop her in a dampness of spirit. Instead, she decided to step onto her balcony, arms outstretched as if embracing the tempest itself. The cool raindrops enveloped her, washing away the remnants of yesterday's storm. With each drop, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, a burden both real and imagined. As the rain intensified, Miriam closed her eyes, leaning into the torrent. She didn't fight it, didn't try to shut out the drumming on the glass. She allowed herself to be a part of it, to blend with the rhythm of the storm. In that surrender, she discovered a new kind of strength, not the rigid, unbending kind, but the resilient bendability of a willow tree that yields to the wind, yet still stands tall. When the storm finally subsided, leaving behind a world washed clean and gleaming, Miriam stepped back into her home. The air was sweet with the scent of wet earth, and a vibrant rainbow arced across the sky, a tangible promise of hope after the rain. Inside, she noticed that the sunflower plant, once wilted, now stood straighter, its drooping leaves held high as if in salute to the conquering sun. A smile touched Miriam's lips. She understood now that joy didn't need proof. It bloomed quietly in the ordinary, in the shared experience of a storm weathered and a resilience found.